So it was a really busy week. I had a great time talking about Hedera on All In Crypto. We have a lot to talk about today. We're going to get into Hedera in AI, sports, DeFi, gaming, and a lot more. We also have some great questions that you guys gave us for Shark Bites, so we're going to address some of those. Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, here once again to bring you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So to kick this off, we're going to get into the kind of developer activity that we're seeing on Hedera. So as reported by Chainbroker, Hedera has seen the most developer growth over the past month. Now, we were second last month, but we've moved into that top spot. Now, I'm sure Hashgraph has a lot to do with this, with everything that they're doing with spheres and what they're doing with AI, but there's a couple of other retail teams that undoubtedly are adding to this total as well, including our premier wallet in the Hedera ecosystem, Hashpack, who just announced several updates in version 13.2.0, the most important of which is support for ERC20 tokens. In our last DeFi Corner, Brady also discussed how SaucerSwap's going to be supporting ERC20s as well. Now, I think in the long term, Hedera token service tokens are going to be the way to do it. But in the short to medium term, this additional support for ERC20s is going to help our ecosystem in several ways, including in the RWA sector. A lot of teams that are working in the real-world asset tokenization space are used to using ERC20s. So to have interoperability, it makes a lot of sense for Hedera to support ERC20s as well. So Hedera is absolutely leading when it comes to that native layer token service, but to have that interoperability, it does make sense to support some old standards as well. Hedera has followed a few times in the past. We have DeFi, we have NFTs, we have gaming, things like that. Certainly we are following, and I think we're going to catch up and surpass at some point. That said, it does look like following is a thing of the past, especially in some really important new verticals that we're looking at. Hedera has built a heck of a moat in the regenerative finance space. We just had that interview that we did with Fraunhofer, and what's happening in the Guardian ecosystem can't be overstated. But what's shaping up to be even more impactful is what we're seeing in the AI space. Last year, we had the founders of Casper moving their marquee use case, Prove AI, to Hedera. Equity Labs is embedding Hedera technology into NVIDIA and Intel chips. We'll have more on that next week. Hashgraph Online is introducing Convai, and the Hedera AI developer kit is second to none. Then we have the ongoing AI Hackathon, and Hedera just posted that there's going to be a demo day for the hackathon participants where they can show off what they've built to both the community and investors. Now, from my perspective, considering some of these developments, it seems like Hedera is head and shoulders over the competition, but let me know down in the comments if there's any other layer ones that are making great strides like this in the AI space. Since it does appear that Hedera is leading a lot and putting a lot of resources into AI, I was also thinking about the one thing that AI can't do, and that's value transfer on the internet. AI is going to need a native system to make transactions. With the lowest fees being on HBAR transfers, it may make sense to use it as the AI medium of exchange. Don't get me wrong, stablecoins have a ton of potential, but HBAR transactions are only 1/100th of a cent compared to HTS tokens like USDC being 1/10th of a cent. With the scale we could see with AI value transfer, it might make sense to use HBAR directly. Of course, HBAR is the most strategic asset within the Hedera ecosystem, and I think anybody that's building in AI should really consider, especially if it's a really high volume use case, should consider using HBAR directly. All right, so we're going to shift gears now. We're going to get into Hedera Gaming. There was a team that had kind of gone away for a while, and I was actually getting a little bit nervous about it, but they have come back, and they're coming back in a big way and are ready to launch their product. So let's check it out. Baz, welcome back. It's been a little while. I was actually a little bit worried about Legends of the Past, but from what I've heard, it was a good thing. Your team was heads down, working on everything. What's the latest with Legends of the Past?
Cool. Well, good to be back. Good to be back. Well, indeed, we went under the radar for a while to be fully focused on the project, to be away from the noise and be focused on the project. And now, very glad to be back because we have three great news to share to HBAR Bryans. So the first news is early access of Legend of the Past mobile game to Hedera community. Indeed, very soon, in a few weeks, we are aiming for early May. We will organize a private, early access to HBAR Bryans. So HBAR Bryans will be able to play Legend of the Past mobile game, discover the control, the gameplay, the core loop, and they'll be able to train. Why do they want to train? Well, that's the second news. because the second news is right after that. So in a few weeks after, so we're also aiming for early June. Now we'll be like launching the game, the full version of the game on Apple Store and Play Store in a Web3 tournament. And that's why HBAR, you have to participate to the private playtest so that you can prepare for the massive tournament. Because indeed, participants and people who are well ranked in the leaderboard will receive massive airdrop during this Web3 tournament. So that's why you have to be ready and you have to prepare to have an edge on other participants during the launch of the game. If you want, Brendan, you can show a video of the gameplay right now.
So, Baz, that looks absolutely amazing. Now, you mentioned that the main game is going to be coming out on iOS and Android, but how are HBARbarians going to be able to get early access?
Yeah, so it's quite simple. You simply have to go to Legion of the Past X account. You go on the pin tweet, and you simply have to submit a form, like giving us your email address that we can give you the private access beforehand, either on Android or on iOS.
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, you went through that pretty quick. We're excited about being able to play the game. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on?
Yes. So I said that there were 3 news. So first news, early access for Hedera. Second news, launch of the game with the Web3 tournament with future LOP token. And the last news is a new business model for Legion of the Past. Well, over the months and years, we've iterated into having a unique gameplay. And because we have a unique gameplay, we're also going to have a unique business model. So instead of doing traditional, like Web2 mobile ads, where you have like videos of all the mobile games like Candy Crush, it doesn't make sense for us because our audience is crypto friendly. And therefore, we want to leverage and we want to give valuable content, Web3 content, to our core audience. Therefore, we've designed a unique mechanisms involving, X API that allow us to feature X account directly within the game. So instead of watching a video to have an extra life, well, you actually be able to engage with X, account to obtain bonuses, extra keys. So we've fully integrated, X API so that you'll be able to, follow, engage, repost X post for our partners. So we'll be charging other partners to be featured inside of our game. But because, Legion of the Past is a game for HBARbarians, we've organized some great collaboration with our Hedera friends that will be fully for free featured inside the game. So if you have HBAR communities, an HBAR project that you want to be featured in the game, don't hesitate to reach out to us directly on Twitter or in our Discord, and we'll see what we can do to feature your community within our game.
Baz, I absolutely love this because, of course, it's not just a game, it's a business, and coming up with new business models like this is fantastic. I've become addicted to some of the things that Earthlings has put out, of course, Smack'em and Steam Runner. I know I'm going to get addicted to this game as well, so thank you for coming on today and telling us all about it.
Thank you so much, Brendan.
So Basile and the rest of the Legends of the Past crew deserve tons of success. So as soon as their game hits the iOS App Store and the Google Play Store, make sure to download it and use it. Give it a shot. Hopefully you'll get addicted. And considering how much time they've put into it and effort, I'm sure it's going to be a good one to play. So the next thing we're going to get into is the first sports league of crypto. And it just so happens to be built on Hedera. And of course, that's Karate Combat. The next event, KC54, is going to be a banger in Dubai, and that's going to be on May 2nd. The team we covered last week, Origin, is sponsoring the entire prize pool of 150 million karate. So now we're shifting the Karate Combat events from dilution events, where more karate is hitting the market, to a mechanism that creates demand, because teams like Origin are actually going out and buying those karate on the open market to fund these prize pools. And speaking of Origin, don't forget to register for their pre-mint to get a whitelist spot for their token airdrop campaign that's going to be coming up in the not-so-distant future. But getting back to Karate Combat, the prize pool for Karate Combat 55 is going to be covered as well, and this is going to be from a diverse group of Hedera builders. So right now we have the Mouth, Candy, Sentex, and Karate Kitties that are all confirmed as silver sponsors for that event. Legends of the Past, Headstarter, Drop, Zenny, Bulbarians, Kabila, Dino, and Mingo are confirmed as gold sponsors. And the token issuing game Smack'em is the only platinum sponsor at this point. I'm excited to show off what the built on Hedera at the center of the Karate Combat pit really means. I'm also working with Zenny and the Karate Combat team to do an Up Only Gamers meetup at KC55, which will be June 20th in Miami. If you're interested in participating and heading down to Miami with us, go ahead and hit me up on either X or Telegram at the HBAR Bowl. And I'm pretty sure the headliner for that event is going to be Rind and Roka at lightweight. It's going to be an absolute banger, so I'm really looking forward to that one. All right, so the next thing I want to touch on, again, is around Karate Combat, but it's expanding the world of Up-Only Gamers. They're getting announcements from additional teams on a regular basis for teams that are going to be building on their Up Layer 2. I saw Tate from Genfinity talking about this week, and some of the first teams like Top Flight Football, World Calisthenics Organization, and the Underground Bowling Association seem like they're going to be hitting the ground running here pretty soon. And it just so happens I was checking karate.com to get some dates for this segment, and there's some really important information for karate holders. They're doing an event for Underground Bowling Association right now. Now, the event is starting in the morning of Saturday the 19th, so if it's before that time and you haven't picked your teams, do it now or you're going to miss out on the opportunity to pick up some karate. And now we're going to jump over into Shark Bites. We got some great questions from the community this week, and as always, Rob did not disappoint. Rob, welcome back. How you doing this week?
Hey, Brandon. Yep, another great week and looking forward to getting into these questions. Some good ones this week.
Well, we have a little bit of a time constraint this week, so we are going to do a little bit of a rapid fire this week. We're going to start off one from Hedera Staking, who says, I have one major concern related to fixed fees. If I'm holding just enough HBAR for X transactions, but the price of HBAR drops in half the next day, the cost to execute X transactions doubles. So fixed, but not if the price drops. What's the fix to fix a bottom price? Lewis has one along the same lines. Is there an on-demand liquidity setup for enterprises to run use cases without having to stockpile their own HBAR? Why stockpile a volatile asset? Price decreases, less transactions from the own pile. Buy more a week later, but price has increased, so cost projection issues do exist. So, Rob, I would say right off the bat that yes, there might be some of this. I think a good CFO or the financial department can probably manage some of this stuff, but it's certainly not as bad as a native cryptocurrency just going up in price and staying there. At least it adjusts on a fairly regular basis. But I'm sure you have some insights on this as well.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I mean, this is fairly standard treasury management, albeit in the kind of Web3 space. So any business that uses third-party services that require payment, need to manage those fees and manage one's treasury, right? So that might be traditional balance sheet management or asset management or anything. In this case, it's how does one build and manage the fees in a new type of with a new type of instrument, i.e., a cryptocurrency, in this case HBAR, in order that you optimize, you'll most efficiently use that particular asset. And yes, of course, if you stockpile or if you have a large account's worth of HBAR and the price goes up and down, then from a day-to-day perspective, the kind of the true cost of those transaction fees goes up and down with it, even though we're fixed fees, fixed in USD, and super low cost and predictable. So knowing that, actually, it's a lot simpler, because if you buy at spot, you can, within the day that you're using the network, then there's going to be very little exposure or risk exposure to the movement in the price of HBAR. I mean, some days, of course, in the crypto market, it goes up significantly or down significantly. But your time period is where you control your risk and exposure to that volatility. You can buy almost on a 5-minute basis, right, or even a second basis, right, and keep it in track. with your use case. And of course, it depends on your use case. If you're a low volume, high value use case, then you would probably just buy sufficient HBAR to service that transaction or those transactions closer to the point at which you are making the transaction. If you've got a high throughput use case, then it's a very different way of operating, and so you probably hold sufficient to pay for all your transactions within a period of time. So it's still that time slot. The time slot is dependent on your exposure to the risk of the markets, and it's the forecasting of how many transactions within that period of time you need to cover, and then presumably a little bit of margin either side in order to allow for variance. So you could do that. That does require an enterprise to hold HBAR, and it does require a person, presumably, with the right skills to be able to do that. And many enterprises just simply don't have that at the moment. So there are solutions now emerging, and we've been talking to a few actually from an AP Plus perspective, and there's one that we prefer that does it for you, right? Manages your gas fees, provides that as a service, and you set your thresholds, you set your margins, and it's all done on your behalf. So there are many solutions to doing this, but actually the underlying concepts of low fixed transaction fees enable this to be an awful lot easier to achieve than on other chains where actually you're paying in the crypto, and the crypto itself is highly volatile, which makes it almost impossible to predict your operating costs and therefore your exposure over any period of time at all. I actually honestly believe that these transactions fixed to or pegged to fiat, to US dollars, is one of the more important enterprise features of the Hedera network.
One of the things that could also make this a lot easier or closer to paying a cash price would be automation. And of course, we have tons of tools that would allow something like that to take place. We just need to get to that point. It's still evolving. It's still early. So the next one we have is, we're going to be shifting gears here a fair amount. We're going to be getting into refi. And it comes from Alan Peacock, who says, interesting that Fraunhofer is using Hedera for hydrogen provenance, just like Novitech here in Australia. Also, that proof of origin is very important in Germany now that they've closed the nuclear plants. Meanwhile, in another place, drill baby drill. So Rob, I just wanted to get your take on now having two use cases that are tracking the provenance of hydrogen generation. It seems like, when you have two teams on opposite sides of the world that come to the same conclusion that DLT is a good way to track this, they're probably hitting on something that's necessary.
Well, absolutely, and it's not surprising, right? It's not surprising that you get two. Actually, it's not only two. There are many I'm aware of that are circulating around similar problem statements and have decided that Hedera is the solution to those. Of course, our Guardian ecosystem has hundreds now of methodologies, or what we call policies in the Guardian ecosystem, that align with those sorts of solutions, and the creation of carbon credits or biodiversity credits aligned with particular ways of dealing with the problem. Green hydrogen is a really, really interesting one. So both Novitech and Fraunhofer have decided that. It's not a DLT specific problem statement. Of course, green hydrogen is a solution to real world problems. The use of Hedera makes that solution very much more straightforward. I believe I don't know the details of the Fraunhofer solution, but I don't think it's a Guardian solution. Whereas the Novitech one is. So proof of origin and the ways that they capture the details of the creation of that green hydrogen and then tokenize that is entirely done with the Guardian. Whereas Fraunhofer is doing its proof of origin and in a different way, but still using Hedera. So that's interesting as well, because you've got two different teams coming to similar similar solutions, but using different architectures. And I think that's very much a testament to the general purpose nature of Hedera, that, you know, the network supports different architectures depending on the fit that is necessary. I won't make any statements about which one I prefer, but you know, because I don't know the detail of both. So, and like I think we said last week when there was a question about DMIA and Dovu in competition, well, it's a big enough pie, right? And now we've got two organizations coming to similar conclusions using similar technology, but finding their own product market fit, utilizing their own network and their own kind of commercial strategies to bring it to market. That's absolutely fine. Right? Hedera is a common good. It's a network that anyone can build on in any way that they see fit. And so I'm delighted to see that these two single types of use case are being built on Hedera in different ways, because then that's how we truly compare and contrast, how we get to best practice, how we understand, you know, how enterprise solutions are being delivered on Hedera, and we can draw conclusions, and everything else that follows helps. Of course, Novik Tech is, you know, green hydrogen isn't the only solution that it's bringing to market. It's got a range of solutions, and in fact, I know of a number of organizations that are speaking to them in Australia to build out a range of different products. So, and there's a lot of interesting news coming from them very soon too. So, it's a fantastic space to be in, and I think you know, watching all of these sustainability solutions now starting to emerge again is testament to a lot of the foundational groundwork that Wes and the team have been doing, as well as the Hedera space more widely.
I want to fit one more in here, Rob. I know we're getting short on time, but Kevo says it's been 7 to 8 months since Charles Atkins' letter to the community and the HBAR bull, myself, his letter to the governing council on native staking. Has there been any progress on native staking? Is it actually being discussed? And what's your opinion on Charles' progress from his letter? Now, just to give everybody a heads up of the different topics that Charles covered in his letter, it was transparency and accountability, excessive compensation concerns, community engagement, accountability measures, strategic vision and leadership, revitalized marketing strategy, and improved vision. So, Rob, the first thing I want to say on this is I want to give Charles a little bit more time. He just came into the position at the beginning of the year. I want to give him until he's ready to rebrand, because I think when they rebrand from the HBAR Foundation to the Hedera Foundation, that's kind of when he's settled in. Now, that can't, of course, be an unlimited time frame, but I would say, you know, a year out from when he wrote that letter. So we're talking about sometime in the summer would be when he would address it. As far as native staking, from my perspective, the one thing that I would rather see, because there must be some objections to it, for me, distributing some of the tokens using that mechanism, the native staking mechanism, makes an awful lot of sense. And I've gone into that ad nauseum at this point. And especially against one of those topics that Charles talked about, the excessive compensation. We don't want to treat employees of these organizations any better than the builders or the capital providers that are, you know, providing that capital. And we're talking about, of course, HBAR holders there. So there is, it only makes sense to me that we would have native staking at a higher rate. But I'm sure there's objections out there. So what I would like to see is those be discussed more publicly. So if there are solutions, the community in general can try to come up with those solutions and figure out and move forward. But yeah, I want to give Charles a little bit more time. But once we get to that point, I'd love him to go through bullet point by bullet point on all those things and talk about how he's done himself. And I'm hoping we're going to get to that point. Right now, his head's probably still spinning. He's trying to get everything in place. We know that they've done a lot as far as infrastructure, but I think there's a lot more work to be done. But Rob, do you have any insights?
Yeah, I mean, there are two very distinct questions here. It was Charles's open letter to the community, you know, laying out his table. I mean, prior to joining the foundation, I mean, when he published that, he was still the president of Hedera before, you know, moving across the foundation to execute on many of these plans. So, you know, if you publish an open letter to the community, it is a statement of intent. I think giving him time is a good idea. I mean, you're not going to execute on everything immediately. I mean, it's only been in 3 months, and there's been some big organizational changes within the foundation. From my perspective, I think they've actually hit the ground running. There's an incredible amount of change and improvement from just a few months ago. I mean, many of the changes are behind the scenes. Many are actually, things that might seem like isolated kind of points, such as the increased USDC liquidity, such as the integration and ecosystem integration successes like Fireblocks that's just coming. And we're seeing a lot of the point changes across the whole of the foundation joining up. And the joining up is strategically aligned with these, with some of these things that Charles has mentioned in his letter. I suspect some are. It's easier to write a letter about things than actually execute them in practice. And so he has an organization, the foundation now, to execute upon those things. Some will be easier, some will be harder to achieve. I think it's a good idea to give him a couple more months or a few more months, and then ask him to come on the show and talk to them. In terms of staking, of course, the foundation has a role to play in that, and they can fund account 800, and there are within the limits set by the governing council, can improve. There's other ways to get more benefits, rewards into the HBAR holders, and I think there's a few other levers that he can pull other than that. CoinCom is the committee which deliberates on all of this kind of the economics of the Hedera network, and it's for sure native staking is on that agenda all the time. So the process is for CoinCom to actually work out the mechanics to track the how it's progressing in regard to everything within the Hedera and HBAR economy, and then make recommendations to the governing council. The governing council can only make decisions on matters of network governance, not on ecosystem growth or necessarily the ways that the network can be utilized. That's for the foundation to do. But of course, we need to be aligned in our thinking as well. So I think native staking is still on the table, along with a number of other things, and then the foundation has other levers that it can pull too. I think we all would like to see greater flexibility around the native staking. We'd all like to see greater revenue coming into the network to boost those coffers as well. So that's one of the things that the foundation is specifically tasked with doing, and growing the ecosystem, growing revenue, and ensuring better returns. So it's not a one topic issue.
Sure. No, makes perfect sense. Rob, you're already late for your next meeting, so we appreciate you coming on here every week to answer the questions from the community. We also appreciate the community for getting your questions to us. I know we missed a few this week, but we'll try to get to them next week. As always, Rob, thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
My pleasure. See you next week.
So now we're going to get into how content creators like myself can leverage Web3 to further engage with their communities. Of course, I've been doing that through my NFT collection, the Bulbarians. I set up my Galaxy World. It has been going absolutely great. I'm giving early content to people that are in that world. Of course, you have to have one of those tokens to get in there. This weekend, I have hopefully, we have this huge announcement that's going to be coming out around Mingo. And I'm going to be putting that early on my HBAR Bull World. And one that's just as big, and something that I know people are really curious about, is Equity Lab and what they're doing with NVIDIA and Intel. And I'm going to be doing an interview with them next week. And once again, I'm going to try to give early access to those people in my HBAR Bull World. And now it looks like the tools that can be used by content creators is going to expand even further with another team. So Zoop is pivoting a bit into the creators economy. Of course, Zoop made headlines recently for making a bid on the American portion of TikTok alongside the HBAR Foundation, and I'm looking forward to how I might be able to leverage what they're doing in my Bull Barbarian community. I always want to put my hand up to be a pilot on anything these teams want to do when it comes to content creation like this. And if you want to buy a Bull Barbarian just once to get first crack at that Equity Lab interview and then many more interviews going into the future, you can head over to Centex and you can pick one up there. There's also a couple available over on the Kabila marketplace where there's a few available for just over that mint price. Now we're going to be taking a look at an interview that I did that was way overdue. It's with the founder of the DEX aggregator, EtaSwap. Now, we're actually going to be focusing on a new product they have. It's a bridge, and one of the first bridges that's actually going to be leveraging the Layer 0 protocol. So we hear about interoperability and Layer 0, Axelar, all the time. And EtaSwap is one of the first platforms that has actually implemented some of these solutions into their platform. Danielo, welcome. We appreciate you coming on.
Hello, Brandon. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. So just to start off, why did you decide to make this bridge using Layer 0?
So actually, when I was creating the bridge, I tried to resolve my problem as a user. So I find current flow with bridging funds to Hedera kind of requiring some hassle, yeah? So you cannot done it in a single transaction. For example, I had some funds, USDC on Avalanche, and I wanted to move it to Hedera. Since HashBAR does not support USDC on Avalanche, I had to swap it to AVAX, yeah? Then bridge AVAX to Hedera, where I receive wrapped AVAX, and then I had to swap it again one more time inside the Hedera DEX to the USDC. So I find this kind of uncomfortable and requiring some hassle. So I decided to make a project which user can swap funds in a single transaction. So yeah, nice, seamless, and easy.
Well, I think the best way to show people exactly what you're doing here is to walk them through the platform. Can you just walk us through exactly how this works?
Yeah, so basically to do the transaction, you first need to connect the wallets. Since Hedera and EVM wallets has different addresses, so you have to connect both of them. If you are swapping from EVM to EVM, you have to connect only EVM wallet. For example, let's swap from Base to Hedera. We need to connect Hedera wallet. Just 1 second. Right, the second action, connect EVM wallet. So recently we added Rainbow and Wagmi stack, so you can connect every wallet in the world. Yeah, so this is single step transaction. Basically, we need to swap 500 USDC from Base to Hedera. What do we see on the screen? And amount will be 0.3% less than initial amount. That's because of bridge fee. Bridge fee is fixed and its rate 0.3%. So in the end, you're gonna receive 498.5. So first, you need to sign an approval transaction. So the smart contract will be able to fetch these funds from you. The second step is actually interaction with the contract. And after we sign this transaction, what's gonna happen next? So Layer 0 will catch this transaction on a source chain. You can see the date and the current status of the transaction. So meanwhile, I'm gonna tell how it works under the hood. So under the hood, we have 2 smart contracts, yeah? One on Base and one on Hedera. Those smart contracts contain some liquidity. So imagine you have 1K USD on Base and 1K USD on Hedera, and you're trying to swap something, yeah? So you put your funds to the liquidity, to the treasure on one chain, then Layer 0 verify your transaction, and it's releasing the funds from the treasury on other chain. So native liquidity on one side and native liquidity on other side. So we don't need to do some sort of arbitrage or something with wrapped coins. Everything happening only with the native coins. The next step, after Layer 0 was able to find the transaction on a source chain, the next step is DVNs. This is decentralized verifier networks. And those are persons who, in an automatic way, verify the validity of the transaction, wait for enough confirmation and stuff like that. For now, as a verifiers, we are using DVNs from Layer 0, from BCV Group, and from Horizon. If any new validators appear in the system that support Hedera, we are always open to using. And in the end, like when DVNs verified everything is cool, is correct, so there is a sealer and the transaction and destination chain. When everything happened, you can see details of your transaction on the stats page. Yeah, right. So this is our latest transaction from base to Hedera like 3 minutes ago. To see the details of the transaction, you can click on the link and it's gonna open on layer 0. And you can actually like check it, the source transaction and destination, like the source transaction hash contained transfer of 500 USDC to our smart contracts address, and the destination transaction, let me find it, contains crypto transfer from our treasury for 198.5 USDC to the end user. Yeah, so that's basically it. Nice and swift, but there is a lot of dependency on liquidity, on amount of liquidity that we have at the moment. So right now, user in the current liquidity pools position, user will be able to swap up to 7K USDC from Avalanche and Base to Hedera. And liquidity, like migrating back and forth, like forward and backward. So amount of liquidity in the pools are constantly increasing. It's increasing because of the fee. So take 0.3% fee, and this is accumulated in a smart contract.
Well, we certainly see the value of onboarding people into the Hedera ecosystem using a bridge like this. It makes things a lot easier. Hopefully we can get some entities out there like the HBAR Foundation to add some liquidity in here. So what does the future look like? What's the roadmap look like for EtaSwap in the future?
Yes, so from closest targets, we definitely want to increase TVL. So this will let users to have a smoother experience and transfer bigger amount of funds. So yes, so the experience would be nice and swift. And also we want to increase list of supported tokens, because there is not only USDC, but there are several projects on Hedera which has native tokens on several chains. So it would be very nice to have them. This is a short-term plan. Like we gain exposure, we increase the TVL, and we increase the amount of supported tokens. And the long-term plans, we are going to write smart contracts, staking smart contracts. That means that actually retail is gonna participate in the bridge liquidity, and rewards for the stakings will be a part of fee generated by the bridge.
Understood. All right. So one of the teams that jumps right into my mind is Karate Combat. You know, their token is both on Ethereum and Hedera. So I'm going to talk to them right after this, and maybe we can get those swaps going as well, because I know that there's been some issues with arbitrage around that. So it would make some perfect sense. All right. So before we let you go, I'm really impressed with everything that I've seen here today. It makes things a lot easier, as I mentioned. Is there anything else that you'd like to pass on to the Hedera community before we let you go?
Yeah, so basically, like Hedera doing like omega huge steps forward because of integrating things that other chains like used to integrate. Like it started from Wallet Connect, and the next layer 0. Right now we have Chainlink. Yeah, who knows what we're gonna have in future? But the cross-chain integration, it's a way to go. So it's like. I really appreciate Hedera doing this, and yeah, this is the future.
Well, we hear about this interoperability all the time. We know that we have to have solutions that actually use these platforms like Axelar and Layer 0, and you're the first one to actually do it, or at least the first one that I know of, so we appreciate it. Daniela, thank you so much for hopping on today and telling us about it.
Thank you so much.
So at very least, I would go over and get familiar with using the EtaSwap platform, because when there are other opportunities that pop up in the Hedera space, you want to be able to move over as quickly as possible. And EtaSwap absolutely provides that. So the next thing I want to do is I want to give some props to one of the recent winners in a hackathon that was held in Africa. So the Nairobi Stock Exchange and Hedera held a hackathon they called the Hashathon, and Hedgehog was one of the big winners. Hedgehog is an on-chain leading protocol built on the Hedera network that uniquely utilizes tokenized real-world shares from stock exchanges as collateral. By bridging traditional finance with decentralized technology, Hedgehog offers a secure, transparent, and efficient way to leverage real-world assets within the blockchain ecosystem. So just saying that, it doesn't take long to see why the Nairobi Stock Exchange would be interested in what Hedgehog is doing. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take before the Nairobi Stock Exchange starts to integrate some of these technologies into their platform, but with the priorities that have been laid out by their CEO, I don't think we're going to have to wait too long. So now let's jump over to what's going on the Hedera network with some network analysis. There hasn't been much change in network throughput. We're still sitting at about a 2.5 second time to consensus finality. There's been 86,000 accounts created this past week, 400,000 NFT transfers, 31,000 non-HBAR fungible token transfers, and 722,000 smart contract calls. Now let's take a look at the crypto and HBAR markets. There's really nothing too exciting going on in the markets, possibly lending itself to the Easter holiday week. Stocks are more or less flat. Bitcoin is down 1% on the day and up 1% on the week to 84,600. HBAR is the opposite, up 1% on the day and down 1% on the week to 16.6 cents. There might be some support around 15.5 cents and then a stronger support down around 12 cents and resistance between 17.5 and 18 cents. The markets look indecisive right now, so I'm hoping for things to be more clear next week. So looking forward to next week, I'm going to be doing an interview with Michael Cantor. He's going to give us an update on AI generally in the space. We are also going to get that interview done with Equity Labs, so I'm really looking forward to that one. I'm also going to try to get that interview out that I had done with Mingo. They have a really big announcement, as I mentioned. And of course, we're going to get Rob back for Shark Bites. So if you have any questions about the HBAR economy or the Hedera ecosystem, go ahead and drop those down in the comments. I'm also going to get interviewed next week by Paul Barron. He has 1.6 million followers, so I'm really looking forward to that one, getting the word out about Hedera. That's pretty much all we have. We'll see you next week.